Welcome to Mitchell Elf. Our theme this year is Adaptations, and this unit is Beaks, Feet, and Feathers. And this is Center 1, focus on feathers and feet. This center can easily be divided into two centers, one on feathers and the other on feet. The goal of this center is for students to examine the structures and the uses of birds, feathers, and feet. And the amount of information in this center could easily be divided into two centers, and the kids would have more time to examine the various items that we were able to borrow from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. The same information that we've given out in regards to our loan items from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science is again true with this unit as well, only even more so because the specimens that we've borrowed are very fragile. They're called study skins, most of them, where the inside of the bird has been removed and the skeleton has been removed for study separately. And so what we have are the skins that are then stuffed with batting, and so the birds don't have eyes. The batting comes through, but they're preserved really well in terms of being able to study the beak structures and look at the feathers and look at the feet and talk about what you see. It might be a little alarming to some kids because they are so lifelike. So you might want to discuss that with them and just let them know that, you know, this is an important process and an important job that the museum does in maintaining and keeping collections like these so that they can use them for educational and study purposes. The value of the items that we've borrowed is estimated about $2,000. So it's so important that we continue to do a good job that we have been doing, and I thank all the volunteers who have been doing such a good job at taking care of things. And I will just reiterate that I have seen some people with the skulls letting the kids pass them around and handle them, and with these we cannot do that. They need to stay on the table. You need to enforce the two-finger touch where students are reaching out and just touching the beak, not poking eyeballs that don't exist there, and leaving the mounts on the table. We suggest you get, or they're not mounts, they're study skins. We suggest that you get out one at a time and let students examine them, just basic examine with hand lenses and make observations and talk about the structures that they're seeing. And then lastly, in your outline, we discussed that when you're packing up the items, that they need to be, the heavy items need to go back in the bottom of the bin and wrapped in this foam or the bubble wrap that we provide, or that the museum provides. Each item needs to be wrapped carefully. I have found sometimes these foam things that stack on the top and everything else just inside. They need to be wrapped up carefully. Again, heavier stuff at the bottom and lighter ones on the top. And again, if anything does become broken or anything like that, please put it all in a Ziploc bag together and notify us at mitchellelf@gmail.com immediately. So the nitty-gritty and the fun stuff of this center is that students are going to start out by examining the flight feathers. So the different kinds of feathers, and there are all different kinds. There are flight feathers, there are contour feathers, down feathers, and plume feathers. And there's a great display of them here that students can take a look at and have them discuss similarities and differences that they see. The information on these is in your outline, so I'll leave it to you guys to read about that, what each kind of feather is designed for. Again, tell the kids to examine the feathers with hand lenses and ask them what they see. Make sure they notice things like the hollow shaft that's there at the bottom, and talk about why would that need to be hollow, perhaps. Talk about the bird's beaks what in the substance that forms them, which is keratin, which is the same substance that forms human hair and fingernails and the exoskeletons of crustaceans and insects. And have students talk about what's different and what's similar about the feathers. And I already kind of talked about that and trying to figure out what purpose different feathers would serve. Then we have provided in a totally separate bag, labeled for you, feathers that students can more closely observe. We have purchased these. They are different than the stuff from the museum. The kids should not, you should put away the museum stuff before you do this part of the activity. And what we're suggesting that you do is, so each class has been, we've purchased enough for each classroom to have 5 feathers. So you can use one with each rotation or one for each kid to look at. But what you're going to do is have them carefully observe, again with hand lenses, what they see in the structure of these feathers. You can go back to the hollow shaft. Some of the feathers have the down at the bottom that helps insulate birds. And then you'll have students go ahead and tell them to pull the feather apart. And again, do not do this with the museum specimen. That's why we purchased a specific set of feathers for you to do this with. And they can look at and observe with their hand lenses the barb-like structure that holds these feathers together. And then they can even take those and push and run them back together, and they'll stick back together. After a while they won't, which is why we provided you with 5, so that you can do that separately with each one. But this is a great way for students to really observe the structure of the feather and the parts of it. Let me see what else I want to remember to tell you. Students can gently pull apart the web of one of the flight feathers. Use hand lenses to see the barbules that project from the barbs and let them try to zip the feather back together. You can talk about how and why birds oil and groom, which is called preening, themselves. When they preen, they're zipping up their feathers and keeping them in good order for flight. They nibble along each feather, removing dirt and tiny insects, pests. So, and a gland above the base of their tail contains oil that birds spread on their feathers. And waterfowl, specifically ducks, which was in the puppet show, use a great deal of the oil on their feathers to coat them since they're swimmers. You can talk about why do vultures have bald heads. And they do because after they eat the bloody carrion, they couldn't clean their feathers on their own heads. So, and the fuzzy neck feathers around their necks act as a bib to keep the blood from dripping down onto their wings. So all kinds of interesting facts we've provided in the outline for you. You can always add and look up stuff. There are a couple of good books. So the next part has you talk about feet, and in the outline it says this is approximately 8 minutes of a 20-minute center. So the feathers you would do for about 12 minutes, and then this could be for about 8 minutes. And you would ask the students to describe how, I'll get the feet out, to describe how the feet, how birds use their feet in different ways. For walking, for perching, for swimming, for running, climbing, nest building, holding down food, and grabbing are the examples we've given you in the outline. But try to have the kids brainstorm on that information. And then you can talk about various types of feet on different birds. And there's an excellent, this board is at the bottom of the bin because it is heavy, but it shows bird feet adaptations, perching, climbing, swimming, wading, grasping, and walking and scratching. So all different kinds. Those are the categories, and this will be important for them to know because there's another center where they need this information so that it all builds upon itself as usual. There is also a emu foot. Let's see if I can get that in my picture. It's very large. It's got some really amazing features. Remember that emus are flightless birds, so you might talk about how these bones are not hollow. You also might talk about how this is pretty heavy, and that might kind of just give them a point of reference for the variety of adaptations that birds have to make. So pretty much, this center is all about exploring the specimens and the items that we've been able to borrow from the Museum of Nature and Science. We have various laminated pieces of information that give you more background on the items that are in here. And there's other handouts, as always, pieces of information, adaptations of the feet that are located in the bin, and a couple books. And so I would highly recommend that you come in and take some time to take a look at what is in the bin and think about how you're going to use it in a thoughtful and careful manner, and contemplate whether or not your group would like to divide this center into 2 centers. And again, taking great care with our loan items from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. So, if you have any questions, you can email us at mitchellelf@gmail.com, and enjoy being scientists and observationists.